Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today in War Thunder we are looking at another devlog for updates 1.89, and this is another Japanese destroyer. I'm hoping soon that we see some kind of heavy cruiser devlog just to see what their plans are for which ones to put into the game, but I am also incredibly happy to see the Akizuki, because, well, first of all, it's great to say. One of the wonderful things about having a lot of these Japanese machines in game is that I get to say some wonderful words, which sound absolutely ridiculous with my accent. So the Akizuki is one of these, and it's touted as one of the top destroyers for the Japanese. The way it's actually worded in the devblog is that this is going to be the top destroyer for the Japanese, and you can kind of understand why. So let's talk about the Akizuki and some of its historical prowess. So the first thing to understand is that in the 1920s, the Japanese decided that they wanted to create they wanted to try and cover their carriers. One of the most important things to the Japanese fleet at the time was their carrier force, and therefore they tried to use destroyers to be able to cover it. So they realized that without any retrofitting, this wasn't going to work. The range that they had was not long enough, and also they weren't suited to the job of covering these large behemoths. So instead they thought about, well, maybe, we can use cruisers instead, because they did have good AA armaments. They were able to keep up with the carriers and all of this. But instead, after many thoughts and many ideas, they decided to retrofit some of the pre-existing destroyers to make them defensive AA machines, which would cover the carriers instead. And that's where the Akizuki comes in. Now, the Akizuki, which was put into War Thunder here, is a late World War II destroyer variant. It's 1944, but even before all of the upgrades, it was seen as the lead destroyer of its class, meaning that, it was the one to look for. So let's have a look at why it was seen as this, and also the two major engagements it did actually get involved in. It was hit by a torpedo from a submarine. It was able to survive, limp back, and then in the Battle of, I always forget the name, Cape Engano, I think is how you say it. Unfortunately, it had a massive explosion, and that eventually led to the sinking of this machine. So it does have a pretty cool history. The fact that it's the lead destroyer of its class is also pretty awesome, and the fact that they've picked the 1944 variant, or the 1944 variant, means that we are in for a nasty surprise if you ever go near it, if you're a small boat or if you are a plane. So let's talk about the armament on this machine. The first thing to note is the main guns. You have 4 sets of dual 100mm. So overall, you have 8 100mm guns, and this is great. They are utility guns. They're supposed to be designed to annihilate pretty much anything, ahead of you. They're not the largest destroyer guns that we have. I believe that goes to the 150s that are on the German destroyer. And also, they should have a pretty good fire rate when it comes to the guns themselves, because they are obviously designed more as an AA gun instead of a ship or anti-ship gun. The only problem with these main guns is that they don't have AP. They only fire high explosive, and I'm sure they'll have some kind of proximity high explosive shell as well. And as a top tier destroyer, one of the biggest issues for top tier destroyers right now is they get jumped into light cruiser battles, and guess what light cruisers have? A ton of armor. And that means that when this thing goes up against light cruisers, it's going to have to stay at the back. It's going to have to be used to attack everything else and hope to hell that the light cruisers leave it alone. So the way I see it is destroyers in the game generally don't have a lot of armor. The light cruisers is where the armor begins to really stack up. And this is why having a stock destroyer versus any caliber of light cruiser when it comes to how upgraded it is can feel absolutely abysmal. Because basically what you have is only HE shells on your destroyer against a light cruiser, and what happens is the light cruiser can pen you wherever it feels like, but you cannot really pen the light cruiser apart from really specific areas which don't do as much damage as other ones. Now, imagine if you took that stock syndrome idea and applied it to even a fully upgraded machine, which is basically what we have in the Akizuki. So it will be absolutely amazing against other destroyers. This will blow other destroyers out of the water because of the sheer firepower that it has on board that we'll get into. But at the same time, you'll be sat in a situation where against the light cruisers, you won't be able to do a lot because they'll just laugh at you while they pump you full of as many shells as they feel like, and you won't even be able to pen them. So, as I said, let's talk about the other armaments. Obviously, the four turrets of 100mm with 8 guns in total is wonderful. But the main cool addition to this machine is the 35 25mm guns, and you can see them sprayed all over the deck. You can see a few here. If we have a look and zoom in on this picture, you can see them all down here, and then of course you have areas where they're sat. So if we look at this picture and zoom in, you can see like a form of a typewriter right here. So this thing is just covered in 25mm. 35 of them might be the most that we've ever seen from one ship, and this pretty much means that against any plane, you will not be able to get near this machine, which is going to be a bit of a shock for many pilots. And it also means that, you know, if you need to switch your guns to what you're using, you will need a good AI crews to be able to shoot down whatever is up there. It's going to be interesting to see all of the little Japanese naval, well, I suppose you would say recruits, man the guns, because even in this short video, I see a few of them, let's just say, spazzing out when it comes to arming the guns. You can see a guy here in that part of the video, and then here you can see them shaking a little bit. Now it is kind of split second, so it's really hard to see, but you can just see here the easiest thing is the one over here. And I can't pause it because when you pause these cubes, it covers the screen with other stuff. But just look here, like where my mouse is next time, and you'll see what I mean. And I feel like we're going to get a lot of glitches like that when it comes to it. There he is. He just does a good switch. But it means that with this impressive amount of anti-air, that you will be very much specialized at killing anti-air planes. You'll be able to kill a lot of airplanes, but at the same time, you are going to be great against destroyers, and you're going to be great against smaller ships because of just the amount of ammunition you can throw at something if you are close to it. I think most people, when they use this, are going to use obviously the main guns as killing ships, and then the auxiliary 25mm to kill planes. I don't think there would be any reason to try and also use the 100mm to kill planes unless there was only planes on the enemy team. And there is a lot of people who have talked about the fact that, you know, we have an issue with planes in the game, and that they need to be dealt with. Well, machines like the Akizuki were literally designed to deal with them. So if they can't deal with them, you know, what can? So let's hope that the Akizuki does incredibly well. The other thing as well is we haven't seen all of the light cruisers that are going to be on offer for Japan. We've seen one of them, and it is more of a heavy destroyer. It is more of a machine which is designed to be fast, maneuverable, and not a ton of armor, but still good enough. It should be very fun against other destroyers, but we haven't seen their out-and-out light cruiser yet, and since this should be seen as more of a support vehicle, even though it is the top of the destroyer line for the Japanese, it's going to support those light cruisers. And I'm just wondering, will those light cruisers have enough firepower to circumvent the fact that you are lacking in firepower against other light cruisers because of the fact you don't have AP? And I'm hoping so, because then the Akizuki, has a pretty cool place. But if that isn't the case, then the Akizuki is going to suffer like many other destroyers do when it comes to facing facing light cruisers, because it just won't be able to kill them. It all really depends on what we see around the Akizuki. Because another problem with it, even though it has this impressive armament when it comes to killing AA, even though it has, the torpedoes, which are absolutely massive. I believe they're 610mm torpedoes, which is just absolutely huge. Very fun, to be quite honest. It's something which definitely shouldn't be overlooked. I'm just having a look at where it says it, but I believe they are 610s. The quad 610 torpedo launcher, which is in the center here. You can see it right here. So it gets 4 torpedoes in total, and obviously if you reload them, when it comes to arcade, you'll be in a great position. So 4 torpedoes on this, meaning that at least you can use them to deal with ships. But the other thing is that this machine, since it was designed to defend carriers, speed was not really a huge issue, because carriers, if you didn't know, are not exactly the fastest things in the known universe. So when they decided to use this thing, they also didn't really need a massive speed behind it. So the Akizuki has 54,000 worth of horsepower when it comes to its engines, but it only goes 33 knots, or 61 kilometers an hour. So this is going to be one of the top-ranked destroyers for the Japanese, but it also has the lowest top speed, which normally also means that it'll have the lowest acceleration as well, which to me is a bit worrying, because in War Thunder it's not going to be supporting carriers, it's going to be supporting destroyers and also light cruisers, and in order to support them, it's going to have to keep up with them. And I'm hoping that the Akizuki is able to do that. If it isn't, it will just get left by itself and, well, annihilated by whatever light cruiser feels like it. And that is the main issue. It's the main issue that I've talked about many times, making the leap from the destroyer to the light cruiser, and now from the light cruiser to the heavy cruiser when they start getting dropped. I am incredibly worried that these types of machines are not designed to really fight each other. There is a definite advantage to one side. There is still really no reason why you would take a destroyer against a light cruiser, unless, it was its AA capabilities in the form of this Akizuki. But if you look at any other of the light cruisers that people play a lot in game, why would I use any destroyers against them? What is the advantage? Well, you may say speed. Those light cruisers are pretty quick. The Akizuki ain't quick. You may say, oh, well, the reload's quite long. Not in stuff like the Brooklyn or the Tiger. They have you beaten there. Maybe AA? Yeah, okay, we can make an argument. Maybe they have less torpedoes. Okay, yeah, there's an argument there. Variety in weaponry. But the main thing is, the core tenets of light cruisers, the firepower, the speed, and the armor, are so much better than their destroyer counterparts, it makes it very hard for me to want to play destroyers against them to get to those light cruisers. I would rather play, rank 2, late rank 3, early rank 3 vehicles in order to get to light cruisers and then spade them, instead of going down the destroyer lines to stuff like the Akizuki. Because guess what? I don't like being at such an inherent disadvantage in games. In when I'm playing ground forces and I'm playing 8.0 and, I'm going up to 8.7 a lot because that's the meta right now, I normally have some tricks up my sleeve, whether it's scouting, whether it's waiting for the enemy to push, whether it's a stabilizer, whether it's, map knowledge and stuff like that. I feel like in Naval, I don't have any of those factors. I don't have any mechanics which will make it so the actual difference between a destroyer and a light cruiser is more than what we see right now in War Thunder. So I'm hoping that in the future machines like the Akizuki have a bigger role to play in the game. But right now, all I see is light cruiser food, especially if this is a late tier destroyer. So, yeah, if that isn't the case and it comes in and, it does well against other destroyers, which it will do, it's got a lot of firepower behind it, then that's wonderful. But I am mentally scarred from taking my British and American destroyers and also my German destroyers and just getting battered by light cruisers over and over and over again. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, Matity, Moxie, Nito, Nick Graham, Super Cacti, Elove Goat, Juan Frivolero, and Seductive Trash Can for supporting the channel.